It's the third to last Saturday of the 2024 college football regular season. It's week 13 of this campaign, and it's College Football Today, live right here on this Saturday on SportsGrid. He is the mastermind of the college football pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. He is OK Dubs. That is Kevin Walsh, and I am Ben Stevens. Just 3 more Saturdays in the regular season. That is it. So when we reach this stage of November, each and every Saturday, each and every week is amplified because, Joe, everybody is in the hunt for a conference championship game appearance. And now in conference realignment, there are so many potential scenarios to set the stage for entering this week 13 Saturday. And of course, as we saw the second unveiling of the college football playoff rankings earlier this week, everybody has an eye on that CFP.
Teams are jockeying for position right now. Updated odds, you have Georgia at number 12 overall. They're going to square off, Kev, with the 7th-ranked Tennessee Volunteers. That's an SEC elimination game. We have a great one in the Big 12, Utah and Colorado. Colorado looking to be that Big 12, maybe dark horse to crack the college football playoff. This is what it's all about, guys. Maybe the slate from a top 25 perspective isn't, as heavy as we've seen in recent weeks, but these games matter from top to bottom. We'll see how it plays out, but I tell you what, buckle up, baby. The last month of the regular season is going to be fantastic.
It's a slate that I think calls for upsets because everything, you don't ever expect chalk, right? And anybody who loses today that's favored, it would be a pretty damning result. Yeah. I'll tell you, though, if you're the Tennessee Volunteers and you look at the precedent being set by this committee who right now is chasing their tail pretty clearly, don't know what they're doing at all, in fact. Probably should put me, Ben, we'll see if we get a seat for you, Lisi, on that committee. We'll see. I don't know what I heard from you on the show. But if you're Tennessee today, a loss shouldn't ruin you. You might not have your starting quarterback. It probably will if you're Tennessee. Just taking a look at what they're doing here, because they're going to shoot you right underneath Georgia, that means, because head-to-heads is all they know how to figure out, and that means you're underneath an Ole Miss team you probably shouldn't be underneath, and here we go. All of a sudden now, playing difficult games is clearly the most unfortunate thing you can do in this college football season.
3 more Saturdays remain in the regular season. Conference Championship Saturday and then Selection Sunday. Quickly to those college football playoff rankings that will factor into our College Football Today game of the week. Kev, as you mentioned, Tennessee number 7 in the country. As you see the top 5 in this, of course, the projected bracket, 4 of the top 5 hail from the Big Ten Conference, and then no other Big Ten teams in the rest of the top 25. You mentioned chaos afoot this weekend, perhaps. A little bit last weekend as well. Miami upset on the road in Atlanta by Georgia Tech. The Hurricanes' first loss of the season. They dropped 5 spots to number 9 in the country. But the biggest faller, perhaps the biggest loser of a Saturday ago, Kev, the team that will be at home between the hedges today, that's Georgia, falling 9 spots from number 3 in the nation to number 12. 12, well, they're inside the top 12. All is good for UGA in the projected bracket based on those automatic bids for our 5 highest-ranked conference champions. Georgia would be on the outside looking in as of this moment.
Yeah, and again, it's a terrible precedent being set. And I'm being very serious. For those of you who love this sport, you better hope this committee cleans up their act, because you're barreling towards the SEC, playing nowhere else other than SEC competition. Not only did Georgia plummet inside these rankings because they're playing the most difficult schedule in college football, Tennessee put up a double-digit victory and was jumped by Indiana and BYU because the committee got it wrong the first time, which they did get wrong, by the way, but it just shows that, as I said, I'm not kidding around here, they are chasing their tail. They are totally lost, clearly uncomfortable that their rankings beyond who's going to be inside the top 4 actually matter. Something that we warned on this show last year, that they usually, we'll rank the top 7, none of this matters, who cares who's 24th. I mean, this is all garbage here. Joe, again, these rankings are messy, and they keep telling people, don't worry, it'll work itself out. Oh, yeah, it will. It will, when we don't get anywhere near an accurate ranking at the end.
Well, we're going to have debate. That's what the College Football Playoff Committee does when they put out these rankings. It's been there each and every year, even prior to the playoff system with the BCS and when we had 4 teams, right? So there's always going to be controversy. That is what fuels the sport. If we're looking at, BYU and we're looking at Indiana, they did get it right because those teams, based off resume, are undefeated and they're deserving of being in the top 5, like Indiana right now, that'll square off with Ohio State. BYU is deserving because they've had some close games, but top 25 resume is fantastic. So they got it right. I guess you can make the argument because of Georgia. But again, we go back to that game last week. The way Georgia lost, untypical of a Georgia Bulldog team. They didn't run the football. They got beat up. You would think that Ole Miss was Georgia last week, the way that game played out. And I think that perception is why the Bulldogs fell to number 12 overall.
And we'll have plenty more of this conversation in my top 10 in comparison to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. And as we set the stage for the wild scenarios that are possible to determine an SEC champion. But as we enter this Week 13 Saturday, our third to final in the regular season, the game of the week is no doubt a top 12 matchup in Athens, under the lights and between the hedges. It is number 12 Georgia hosting 7th-ranked Tennessee. Lisi guy, 9.5-point spread in favor of the Bulldogs. 46.5 is that minimal total. And a part of this game is the injury uncertainty on both sides. Trevor Etienne, the star back to begin this year for Georgia, has been ruled out. Nate Frazier's kind of taken that lead role. And for Tennessee, Nico Iamaleava did not play in the second half last week of the win against Mississippi State. His status uncertain, but props are listed. With some of that uncertainty and uncharacteristic Georgia football, how do you approach this Saturday?
Well, think about the series perspective. It's been dominated by Georgia. They have won 7 straight in the series, the last 4 by an average margin of victory of 22.4 points per game. Picked up this victory last year in dominating fashion in Knoxville, 38-10. But again, I keep going back to last week's game, right? They rushed for 1.7 yards per carry. Offensive line couldn't get a push. Yeah. That was one of the best defenses in terms of run support in the SEC and Ole Miss, and one of the top 10 in all of college football, only giving up 80 rushing yards per game. They're going to need a much better effort going up against Tennessee, giving up 100 yards on the ground. Now, if Nico doesn't play, it's still going to be the tempo of Tennessee's rushing attack, guys. They're averaging 236 yards on the ground. Dylan Sampson, $146 last week on 30 carries, 1 touchdown. If he can get going in terms of this matchup, again, yes, limit turnovers with a backup, but as long as they can run the football, they're going to be in this game. I go back to the defense. I think it's a bounce-back spot for Georgia. I'd be a little hesitant. It's not a best bet, but I do like the Bulldogs here.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia should absolutely smash this team because much better versions of Tennessee have showed up against Georgia and not been able to get a thing going. Heupel's most points he scored against Georgia is 17. That was in year 1, and it was a late 4-minute touchdown that had no consequences on the game. The other performances were 13 points scored and 10 points scored. So now he goes at it today either with Nico, who is going to be banged up isn't the right word, but maybe not on his P's and Q's at 100%, who's had nowhere near the level of season people were hoping for in Knoxville. Or a walk-on, and I believe Gaston Moore getting the football for Tennessee. Again, the Vols scoring 7 points might feel like a miracle, yet books are hanging 17.5. I don't think they fully know what to do here with this number. I don't know if Nico all of a sudden gets put in and this thing goes down to 6. I'm not sure Nico gets ruled out and this goes to 14. I think they're trying to exist in the middle of this number. I will say, I actually don't think Nico's going to play, and I don't think they're winning with him. So I think Tennessee's better off not playing. I mean, going, we didn't even have our starting quarterback. Factor that in, committee, please.
Officially listed as questionable is Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback on the other side. Quickly here, Kev. Carson Beck, multiple turnovers in all 4 SEC games for UGA, where they have been favored by less than 3 scores. This just 9.5.
Yeah, he's been an absolute mess here. We will see if Carson Beck can figure it out before the regular season comes to a close. I still expect Georgia to be inside the college football playoff. He's going to have to start playing better for it to matter, though.
That total working its way down, 46 and a hook on this game day Saturday. A Big 12 battle bright and early. Up next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. with 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you. Pinching your own cheek? As I was looking down and did not know we were getting...
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
An early start in the Rocky Mountain State at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, Colorado, with a path to a college football playoff and a Big 12 championship game appearance, will play host to Utah. How different this year has been for both of these teams with the expectations they had entering. The Buffaloes, now at 7-2, are a 13.5-point home favorite against the preseason pick and favorite to win the Big 12. That is Utah. Cavs CU now nearly a 2-touchdown favorite at home today against the Utes. In a controversial ending last week in the 102nd Holy War, Utah did lose at home in Rice-Eccles against BYU. Meanwhile, Colorado just keeps winning and just keeps covering. 7 consecutive covers. The Buffs are perfect in Big 12 play covering numbers and now laying 2 touchdowns against Utah. Where do you start your breakdown for this early matchup in Boulder?
Just knowing that I respect this Colorado team a lot, but this is a spot that I was anxious for, and I got everything I wanted. I know there are quarterback questions for Utah. I do not care. I am not betting on anyone that Utah's playing at quarterback. Is Cam Rising available? Let him get out there and toss it around. I'm betting on Kyle Whittingham. Quite frankly, Kyle Whittingham could play quarterback, and I would still take the Utes plus the points. This number late last night was 11.5. It shot up to 13.5. Ben, I'll let you explain kind of the questions around that a little bit more. But this, to me, is kind of 2 coaches and being in a spot where I know who I want to back. I'll say this on Deion's side. I think the world of what he's done at Colorado. He's also 0-3 against the number as a double-digit favorite, never even really flirting with the cover. The one time he did, it was because he was up 29-0 to Stanford, and then they lost outright in that football game. It's just not a thing they've done during his time, is cover these type of numbers. I know there hasn't been a lot of them. I know they're better this year than years prior. This is where Kyle Whittingham factors in. A pedigree head coach, one of the most in college football. Not a guy who's won national championships, but a guy who commands respect, and you saw that last week with the upset scare that they put into the BYU Cougars. Whittingham's only missed bowl eligibility twice during his 2 decades at Utah, and not including, of course, the COVID season. And this now is a game that they kind of need if they're going to be able to get back to a bowl game. I'm not sure they get it I'm pretty confident, Joe, they hang inside double digits,
Well, I like Utah with the points as well, 12.5. I think the biggest factor as well is they're going to look to run the football, right? Bernard's number today is 80.5. If he gets through that, they're controlling the line of scrimmage. It's basically going to be a four-quarter game. And the most impressive statistic last week wasn't the offense with Shedeur Sanders going up against Texas Tech. It was how they held and limited that rushing attack and basically held them to 2.5 yards per carry. Force Morton and that offense into long third down situations. This defense is starting to come into form. They're opportunistic. Multiple turnovers in the fourth quarter to change the momentum in that matchup and give them a double-digit lead with about 5 minutes left, and they played very well down the stretch.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to take away from that. The other factor as well, you look at the total in the game, very low. So that total really lays in to Utah's offensive philosophy. They're only allowing, Ben, 23% in terms of third down conversions. That's going to be the matchup. Run the football, stay in manageable third downs, get Shedeur into long third downs because from a sack perspective, they could still bring pressure off the edge. That offensive line is good. It's not elite. We'll see how this plays out. I'm taking Utah. I don't suggest the upset, but I'll take the points with the low 43.5, I think, under today.
Last week, the Holy Wars total was just about 40.5, 41 and a hook. It was the second over of the year for the Utes in their 9 games, and Utah was blanked in the second half last week in Salt Lake. This total is comfortable for Utah, the worst scoring offense that we have seen in the Big 12, or third worst scoring offense, in the Big 12 this season. But part of the reason this line is working even more to CU is because of quarterback questions for the Utes. As you mentioned, Cam Rising out for the remainder of this year. Isaac Wilson, the younger brother of Zach, has been dealing with a litany of issues. There are some reports he is dealing with an illness that would sideline him for this Saturday in Boulder. The starter last week against the Cougs was Brandon Rose. His mom tweeted out earlier this week that he was undergoing surgery, of course shelving him for the rest of this year. But Kev, back to you, because I've had to reset my expectations on Colorado. I'll put my hand up. I did not think that this defense would perform at the level they are, because the only other time this season CU has been booked as a double-digit was in the opener against North Dakota State. Yeah. Colorado won, but did not come close to covering. This is a Buffs defense that is so vastly improved from where they were a season ago. And first-year defensive coordinator Robert Livingston is owed a ton of credit. Last week against Texas Tech, 7 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. Some of the numbers slightly skewed because everybody is trying to run against the Buffaloes. They have been really stout against the run, and if Utah is dealing with quarterback concerns, you can expect a lot of Mekhi Bernard today for the Utes.
Yeah, I think for me with Colorado this season, it's that defensive improvement, why we look at Deion Sanders now as someone who people are, kind of maybe for fun, throwing around in NFL circles, and I think more legit than I ever would have even imagined. Like, I thought the deal with Deion going to Florida State is the talent he's going to bring there, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And Deion just appears to be a phenomenal football coach. The resume is starting to speak for itself. And, Joe, in a season where within the Big 12, kind of everybody's beating everybody, I know they had the K-State loss by 3, but they're rolling teams there, right? They extended on Texas Tech. They dominated Arizona and lit UCF on fire in a game. I mean, they were a dog in. What I think, again, pushes me to Utah's side is the best defenses they've played have been able to stay there, which would be Nebraska and K-State. And that's why, again, to me, like, I say it somewhat, kind of nonchalantly, but I really don't care who plays quarterback for Utah because no one who's going to play quarterback is going to be good. I'm not betting on the Utah quarterback position in this game.
No, it's a contrast in styles, offensive philosophy, and that's why if Colorado does jump up early and push tempo and jumps up 14-0, it'll probably be lights out because Utah doesn't have the capability to play from behind. I will say the strength of that Utah defense, it used to be run support. Now it's the secondary. They're giving up 175 passing yards per game. If they limit chunk plays and force Shedeur to short to intermediate passes underneath, they'll be within the number.
But Colorado's path to a college football playoff is realistic and favorable. CU is the Big 12 title favorite entering Week 13, even in front of BYU. A Big 10 battle in Madison next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
My grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We welcome you back to college football today, live right here on this Saturday on SportsGrid. It is week number 13 of this college football season. He is Joe Lisi. He is Kevin Walsh. I am Ben Stevens. So as we get you set for this Saturday, we head now to Camp Randall, Madison, Wisconsin, in a Big Ten battle with the number one team in the country. Oregon on the road in Madison, a line that earlier in the week, Joe, was above 2 touchdowns, 14 and a hook in favor of Oregon. It is now under that number of 14 at 13 and a half, but still nearly 2 TDs in favor of the Ducks, who have been dominant in Big Ten play as of late. How competitive will this game look tonight in Madison?
I think it'll be very competitive. Couple of factors. That Big Five circled for the wins for Wisconsin. One more, they'll become bowl eligible. Another factor, Luke Fickell has yet to win a marquee game in terms of his tenure in Madison. This is a make-it-or-break-it spot. I expect them to be up for this matchup. They didn't get it done against Penn State. This is another opportunity. They didn't get it done against Alabama. And what I find quite intriguing, they have an extra week of preparation as well, right? We talk about similar teams. Oregon laid 15 and a half to Michigan on the road. They're laying 13 and a half in terms of this matchup. Night at Madison is a different factor. I get that. But, I think Wisconsin's going to be up. I think they can limit big plays from Dylan Gabriel. They grinded out a victory over Maryland last week. He throws for $183 and 3 touchdowns. We talked about, the strength of Maryland's defense was in run support, limiting opposing offenses to less than 3 yards per carry. Again, Oregon wins, but this is going to be a 4-quarter game, I believe. Give me the points with Wisconsin. This is one of my better picks tonight.
I'm confused. Did Luke Fickell just sign up for the same year every year? Hear me out. Last year they were 5-2. They lost 3 in a row, and then their last 2 games were against Nebraska and Minnesota. This year, 5-2, they've lost 2 in a row. Supposed to lose a third straight today, then they're going to close it out with Nebraska and Minnesota. I don't know. So if this is just written in the stars, then they're kind of already done on arrival. The interesting thing about this number is it suggests that Wisconsin could hang around, maybe put a scare into Oregon. Yet when Wisconsin plays good teams, there's no evidence they can hang. Alabama ran them completely off the floor. We saw USC hanging on them in a major way. Penn State, actually, the 4th best team in college football, was the closest game that they've played, because then Iowa drilled them. Sneaky, decent Hawkeye team, I actually think, because I'm just so unbiased. It hurts sometimes. I look to Dylan Gabriel to have a bounce-back game through passing yards. 263.5 is the number. Last week was his first game under 200 yards. Gabriel goes up against the Wisconsin team when they've played those, as I've mentioned, legit passing offenses, and I kindly kept Drew Aller in the mix. You're talking about 8.2 yards per pass attempt. That's Milroe, that's Moss, and that's Aller, which means you're going to need around 32, 33 attempts out of Gabriel, which is usually what you get from him during Big Ten competition here. I think Gabriel can throw closer to 290, maybe even 300 yards on the road here against Wisconsin. I think the Ducks are in a good spot. I would be very surprised if this is a upset alert in the fourth quarter.
So I've heard a couple of people look at this game and, like you, Joe, expect it to be competitive. I'm still wondering how or why you get to that assessment. Wisconsin, as an underdog, already 5 times this year. Both 1-4 straight up and against the spread. The only win and cover for the Badgers was as a slight 1-point underdog against a reeling Rutgers team in Piscataway. Meanwhile, Oregon has covered in a lot of Big Ten games, 3 of their last 4 after not covering in their first 2. And I'm not entirely sure what Braden Locke and the Badgers are going to do, Joe, to this Ducks defense that has improved greatly over the last month and a half. Now, the 9th best scoring defense in the country, only allowing 16 points per game. Also in the top 10 when it comes to total defense as well, around 294 yards. You think the number favors Wisconsin. You bring up a great point. Luke Fickell needs a marquee resume builder for his time, not just wins to end out the year against Nebraska or in the rivalry game against Minnesota. So, Joe, if Wisconsin stays competitive, how?
I think they run the football. Again, conservative type of attack. They're holding opposing offenses to only basically 160, 170 passing yards per game.
Right.
59% in terms of completion percentage. Again, limit chunk plays, right? They get beat this year on the ground as opposed to over the top. Alabama had a significant speed advantage on the perimeter. That was the game that Tyler Van Dyke went down. So, again, this is a game where you pull out all the stops. Again, I don't know if they win this game, but in Madison with the crowd behind you, the extra week of prep, you throw the kitchen sink at Oregon and you see if you cover.
I can't help myself now think about how many times I've mentioned that about Florida State. They just sitting there with 1 win. Not the same situation. It could work out for Fickell. It could
Third
work out.
time for the Badgers as at least a 2-touchdown dog. They've lost both games by 17 points. More on college football today next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you. Pinching your own cheek? Because I was looking down and did not know we were getting...
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
It is week number 12 of this 2024 college football season. 3 more Saturdays. That's it, remaining in the regular season. We welcome you back to college football today. And over the next 3 weekends, there could be a lot of chaos in the Southeastern Conference. Entering week number 12, this third to final Saturday, there are 28 potential scenarios to pit 2 teams against each other in Atlanta in the SEC championship game. 28 potentials, Kev. It is very difficult to try to ascertain how or why or who could play in that SEC title game. I will tell you this, though. There are 8 teams that enter this third to last Saturday with 2 losses or less in conference action. 3 teams with just a single loss in SEC play. Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Texas.
Yeah, the research that I attempted to do, suggested that if chalk holds, it will be Texas against Alabama inside the SEC's title game. I think considering that research mirrors an odds board that has right now Bama well out in front of Georgia or Tennessee or anyone else within the SEC, I think that is clearly then correct. What that means is you're going to need a somewhat unforeseen upset somewhere involving Alabama, who, and they could lose to Mercer. It would have no impact on this, though. If they lose to Mercer, I think DeBoer might get fired at the end of the game, and Milroe might have to transfer. So there's a whole different conversation to be had. But after that, Lisi, I know they have the game against Auburn, and I don't remember who was that one other game that Alabama plays.
Visit to Oklahoma next week.
That's right. So 2 games that they will be considerable favorites
Double-digit, yeah.
Though the Iron Bowl's the Iron Bowl. I've always said that. You talk about, Joe, Wisconsin needing a big win. Man, if you're Venables, you want to talk about salvage a season. You bring Bama into your building, it would do that. I think this SEC race, it is really interesting because it does project now. It's very possible the loser of the SEC championship game is sitting on 3 losses.
Yes, which we would never have thought at the start of the year, right? But there's more parity now with Oklahoma and Texas in there and other teams that are coming up. You see Texas A&M, at least for the most part, over-exceeding expectations. They had an 8.5 preseason win total. They're already sitting at 7-2. Texas, we know that they're strong. Ole Miss, right? Ole Miss, the win last week for Ole Miss really threw this whole conference championship odds in terms of just complete disarray because a lot of people just thought Georgia would roll. We'll get Ole Miss out of the way, and then it's just, we'll take care of business. It didn't work out that way. And Ole Miss is really, to me, the dark horse now because it's not just the offense with Lane Kiffin. It is that defense carrying them, much like we've seen every SEC champion, right? What is the difference between the SEC and everybody else? They can run on the defensive front. They can get after it. They get after the quarterback. They're solid in terms of run support. Georgia dominated TCU 2 years ago. Wasn't even close. These are big boys for Ole Miss, right? That loss to Georgia last year is the main reason why we're seeing the dominance out of Lane Kiffin this year because of how they stepped up in the transfer portal. And we'll see how this plays out. I really am curious about this Tennessee game, and we'll see what Texas A&M does the rest of the way.
But I do just want to clarify something. When you talk about Ole Miss as a dark horse, you're referring to winning a national championship. Because winning an SEC, it's not in their hands. It's my problem.
I'm talking if they get into the dance. I'm talking big picture dark horse. I mean, keep an eye out for them.
Yeah, I'm just, as far as the SEC, this is my thing. Like, I, myself, Joe, right, I'd love to be betting Georgia at 8-1 and win an SEC title.
Yeah.
Georgia has they don't control that.
Correct.
Right? Like, that is why Ole Miss, with what Ole Miss did last week against Georgia, like, that number, if they played at Texas, would be really light. You'd be getting an amazing number at 15-1. That's not Ole Miss being discounted. That is Ole Miss's chances of getting there being clearly very, very small.
Absolutely so. Ole Miss off this week, a visit to Gainesville against Florida next week, and then Black Friday after Thanksgiving, it is the Egg Bowl. Of course, when we look at this SEC Saturday, the game of the week in the conference, the game of the week in the country is in Athens, that top 12 tilt between Georgia and Tennessee. We've also reached the stage in a season where a couple of the SEC programs are taking on a non-conference team, a non-power team, a non-FBS team, as we will show you on this Saturday. But here's a game that is incredibly compelling. We head to Gainesville once again. How does LSU respond after 2 consecutive losses and getting thrashed last week at home in a night game inside Tiger Stadium? Lisi guy, the odds maker's not expecting LSU to show all that much resilience in Gainesville in the Swamp today. Just a 3.5-point spread. Billy Napier has told the media that they expect DJ Lagway to return. He was not out there last week. It was Aiden Warner as the Gators got rolled by Texas in Austin. How do you break down this matchup? What bounce back will we see out of the Bayou Bengals?
They better give a good bounce back because that was a pathetic effort allowing Jalen Milroe $185 on the ground. 311 for a team in terms of Alabama as a whole, averaged well over 6.5 yards per carry. That defensive front seven needs to get after it. Nussmeier looked like a deer in the headlights. I expect a much better effort today. They have 5 straight in the series by an average margin of victory of 10.2 points per game. Picked up this victory by double digits last year. What I really like, though, guys, is points. I expect the offensive continuity for Nussmeier, Mason Taylor, and the rushing attack to get going a little bit more than they did last week with Caden Durham. I think we're going to have points. Last 5 meetings, you look at these scores, 42-28, 37-34, 49-42, 45-35, 52-35, and we're sitting on a 55.5 here. Give me LSU, but I like the over here.
It's tough for me to know exactly what Lagway is going to look like. Like I've heard people say, "Oh, mobile quarterbacks give LSU trouble." I don't know if this kid can move at all. When you're on a stretcher with a hamstring injury, I'm surprised he's not having the Dak Prescott season-ending surgery.
Completely agree.
I'll just say with Brian Kelly, he had a 4-8 season at Notre Dame where he didn't lose 3 games in a row. You have to go back to 2014, the last time BK had a 3-game losing streak here. It happened. It was a 7-1 team that all of a sudden lost 4 in a row. So there's some similarities, but you're talking about something that for Brian Kelly would, I think, shake his standing at this program, that he, again, immediately caught fire, went to an SEC title game here. A lot of pressure on Brian Kelly. Napier's already been re-upped.
Yeah. 8th time in 9 games for Florida. They will be an underdog against power conference competition, 4-3 ATS in the previous 7. LSU has not been a good cover team this year. Favored 4 times against Power 4 competition, just 1-3 against the spread. Quickly here, Lisi guy, to your point about this Blake Baker-led defense. After the win against Arkansas, holding the Hogs to only 38 rushing yards in that game, they were allowing just 20.6 points per game as a scoring defense. They have given up 80 total points in 553 rushing yards in their last 2 games against A&M and Alabama. Speaking of the Crimson Tide, Kev, they're playing an FCS foe, a 9-win FCS foe, but still an FCS foe that is Mercer. Alabama at home today inside Bryant-Denny, now 42.5-point favorite. You said it earlier, this game has no impact on the Tide's outlook for the SEC championship, but still you want to look good. How good will Alabama look today in Tuscaloosa?
It's tough to tell because Mercer, again, you mentioned, is a 9-win football team, and DeBoer only 1 game in his time at Washington against a non-FBS opponent. Now, they did beat up on a Portland State team 52-6, covering what was in a little bit of a 30.5, 31.5 spread somewhat easily in that game. I would look towards the over here, though, Joe. Mercer's record is largely due to their offense, so if Alabama can get into the 40s in this game, Mercer should be able to do enough.
Absolutely. 57.5 to me is light, and the biggest thing for me is that they're 4-0 all-time against Mercer.
Yeah.
Last time they played was back in 2021, but the difference between maybe Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer, Nick Saban will win this game 55 to maybe 3, cover the number, and get out of Dodge. So get the cover. That's the most important thing for the back.
Hey, Bears, take the check, but we're still going to hammer you. Texas A&M playing host today inside Kyle Field to New Mexico State. This is not Diego Pavia's NMSU, 38.5-point spread in favor of the Aggies. That is where the SEC stands. Entering week number 12, plenty more elsewhere. Up next.
sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma will do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on College Football today. It is week number 12. We are here in November with just 3 more Saturdays to go in this college football campaign. We stay in the SEC with one team still in contention for a spot in the SEC championship game. That is Missouri, still ranked inside the top 25, according to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, and only 2 losses. South Carolina also in the top 25 as well at number 21 as the Gamecocks have figured something out here in the last month. 11.5-point spread now in favor of South Carolina. In our second top 25 tilt of this Week 12 Saturday. Kev, the reason the number has moved by 2 points in the last hour or so, Brady Cook, Missouri's quarterback, was listed at doubtful on the initial injury report out of Columbia earlier this week. He is now said to be a true game-time decision. Some media outlets there in Columbia reporting they expect him to start and play today for Mizzou.
Yeah, so I go back and forth on this game, right? Boom, boom, boom. We're doing some spread math here. At the time, I'm not expecting Brady Cook to play. And the final line is, brother, this is 3 points less than, I can't say that word, Alabama laid? No way, man. I'm on Missouri here. Brady Cook playing I feel just like you, Joe. You taught me well. Don't care that Brady Cook's playing. It's not about that. It's about the number. Not that I would, sure, I'll take Brady Cook playing, right? I can't get there with South Carolina laying this type of number. I understand the performances that they've been putting on. You say they found something out this last month. They've just been good this year.
Yeah, good point.
Again, they are arguably Ole Miss's best performance of the season. Yes, of the season. I know what happened last week. I stand by that. This to me, though, Joe, is a spot where we're seeing South Carolina, the top of the market. I think we can buy low on Missouri here.
You bring up good points. Now, from the series perspective, Missouri has won 5 straight. They've won those games by an average margin of victory of 13 points per game. They won this ball game 34-12 last year. But you have a team in South Carolina hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Oklahoma win, A&M and Vandy. They won those games by an average margin of victory of 23.6 points per game. But it's not just the rushing attack. Back-to-back 200-yard performances, right? 286 a couple weeks ago against A&M. They back it with 216 on the road in Nashville. That front seven is holding opposing offenses to 2.9 yards per carry. Back end is only giving up 195 passing yards per game. holding opposing quarterbacks 55% completion percentage. And I'll go back to the Alabama game. The thing that scares me is Bama rushed for 271 on them. They shut down that offense. Granted, it was limited without Nate Noel and Brady Cook in that lineup.
He played, but did not complete the game.
Right. They were limited. They more vanilla, but they got beat up in the interior. I'm not suggesting maybe South Carolina is on the same level as Alabama, but man, they are close. They are running the football hard and shutting down the run. This is not a best bet for me, but due to the physicality of the defense of South Carolina, I would lay it at home.
South Carolina's front seven, one of a few teams around the country with 30-plus sacks this year and also limiting opponents on the ground to less than 110 yards. And you're right, Kev. In terms of figuring it out, they have been a highly competitive team all season long. They are absolutely blitzing teams here as of late. They have covered in 4 consecutive games, 6 of their 7 in SEC play so far this season. The only non-cover, that loss at home against Ole Miss. But as a favorite, South Carolina has been as good as anybody with Shane Beamer since he became the head coach in Columbia back in 2021. 12-5-1 against the spread, one of 4 FBS programs in the last 3.5 years to cover in 70% or more of their games as the favored side, which also then leads to Missouri. Against Power 4 competition this year, 2-4 ATS. Their only 2 covers, narrow wins against Auburn and last week in a wild ending against Oklahoma. And oh, by the way, the Tigers and the Sooners are a combined 2-10 in SEC action. For me, I look at the total in this game because, Joe, to your point, Missouri has had a lot of issue slowing down teams that are expected to beat them. Missouri as an underdog, 1-2 ATS, but over in 2 of those 3 games. They've allowed at least 23 points in all 3. And it's not just that defense that's great, defending the run and providing pressure. It's also Lenora Sellers and Rocket Sanders who have been eating on the ground here in this 3-week stretch.
They have. I said 286 a couple weeks ago. They averaged well over 6.5 yards per carry. They're averaging 180 yards heading into this matchup per game. Lenora Sellers is a mobile quarterback again, and he's being protected in terms of third downs. When you protect the quarterback, you give your playmakers an opportunity in terms of one-on-one matchups, and that's what they're doing. Winning on third down as well from a defensive perspective. 34% third down conversions and 11 interceptions on the year. That's a great recipe. This is going to be an interesting game because if Missouri can push the envelope, I think we'll get over this 41.5. But I need to see it before I believe it because I still believe, Kev, Missouri's that finesse type of offense. They get pushed around by bigger defenses.
I just want to make this point, though, with both of these 2 teams because we are getting closer and closer to people talking about the CFP and all the SEC bias, right? And, I know there was a comment of, I'd have a hard time leaving out a 3-loss SEC team. And this, okay, Missouri is 7-2, and Drinkovitz had to beg, essentially, for people to pretend like they could still make the playoff.
Correct.
When we all know they cannot make the playoff. They could win out, finish 10-2 in the SEC. I believe, Ben, preseason, as someone who was in on Missouri, if I said, hey, they finished 10-2.
For sure.
You would have guaranteed yourself you cash tickets on them making the playoff. Missouri's ranked. They should be ranked. I think that they are fine to be inside the top 25. But, again, there is no SEC bias that has elevated Missouri into a conversation we all know they do not belong in. Though I'll tell you, man, it'd be nice if the Big Ten could have a team of a Missouri or a South Carolina instead of insanely putting 4 teams in the top 5 and the same amount in the top 25.
He's insulting you now, I think.
No, I get it. I understand it. I also think that Missouri's still being ranked, and I'm not going to argue they shouldn't, but the fact that Missouri is still ranked despite how they have looked against ranked competition, frankly, Power 4 competition, is bolstering some of those resumes in the SEC. So that's the game today between South Carolina and Missouri. 11.5-point spread in favor of the Gamecocks. We go from the SEC to a crucial conference game in the American. Up next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was
that's what your
looking down
grandma
and did
does,
not
right?
know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
A crucial game in the American on this third to final Saturday of the college football regular season, where one team is now ranked inside the top 25. That's the Green Wave of Tulane, 25th in the country, as they head to Annapolis today to take on the Naval Academy. Navy bouncing back from 2 consecutive losses after a perfect start with a big victory last week against South Florida. But, Kev, when you look at this Tulane team, number was 6.5 earlier this week. Now, in some spots, it is more than a touchdown at 7 and a hook. Some, that flat number of a touchdown. Tulane is 8-2 straight up. Perfect in American play at 6-0. Also 8-2 against the spread, along with Army and Indiana, the only 3 teams in the country covering at an 80% hit rate or better.
Yeah, so I think with Tulane, what's been the problem for this team? They lost their step-up games, right? K-State and OU. And I think for them, they've not had either one of those teams run out and be dominant. And, I know it'll sound silly, but in the way Oregon has, which has helped, keep Boise State in such favorable conversations. Well, what is Navy? Is Navy a step-up spot? A 7-2 football team whose biggest game of the year, they got beat so bad they forgot to wake up for the next game against Rice. That's the reality of it.
It is.
That is a 2-week span there for Navy that maybe ruined their season. Because the other 7 games, they looked as good as any team in college football. Yes, of course, the strength of schedule had plenty to do with that, as it has Army. But I look at this number, and man, Tulane is laying way more than I would have anticipated here. If this game was at Tulane, okay, this number would make some sense. But I think this game being in Annapolis suggests this number, again, is just too far. The best version of Navy, before they had lost their games, laid 16.5 at home to Charlotte. We saw Charlotte host Tulane as about a 15-point dog. Again, just work with me here, but you move those numbers around, and that would suggest that Tulane on a neutral is about a tick under a touchdown. Okay, if you've moved some things with the Navy performances, I get that, but you've not moved it enough to negate home field advantage. Factor in this being a service academy and it being over a touchdown now in a number of spots here. Joe, I like Navy to cover quite a bit.
Yeah, I disagree. I like Tulane. I watched every play of that Navy game on USF last week. I was dead wrong with South Florida, but the one thing that I think from an offensive perspective that South Florida failed is they had the advantage in terms of the physicality, in terms of the beef and weight on the offensive line, and failed to run the football or have a commitment to the run that they should have had in terms of that matchup. Fell behind, and Archie, the quarterback, was completely inconsistent. And once they fell behind by 2 touchdowns, signed, sealed, and delivered. Tulane's averaging 227 rushing yards per game, 5.1 yards per carry. And you look at the back-to-back games. They rushed for 217 against Charlotte a couple weeks ago, 329, and I understand it was Temple, but the commitment to the run is there. I like that recipe. On the road, in Indianapolis, not going to be easy, but that defense as well for Tulane. $114 on the ground allowed. They have very physical defensive tackles. We saw that play out earlier in the year against Kansas State. I like that recipe. To me, it's like they're begging you to take Navy. I'll lay it with Tulane.
Tulane, one of the best physical teams on either side of the line of scrimmage. Second best scoring defense and rushing defense, only allowing $114, which is critical against a service academy, only behind Army in the American. Tulane's offensive line, a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award for the best O-line unit in college football, because Tulane is one of 10 teams averaging 225 rushing yards per game or more, and a lot of that is Mekhi Hughes, $117 on the ground or more in 5 straight games for Tulane, and the young freshman quarterback for John Sumrall, 10 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. That's Darian Mensah in the 6 games in AAC action. And Lisi, the reason this game is critical, Tulane is the slight minus money favorite to win the AAC championship at minus 110. It is the other service academy in Army, ranked 1 spot in front of Tulane in those college football playoff rankings, that has the second best price at plus 110. So Tulane trying to stay in pole position to control the American.
Yeah, the American's very competitive. We see, they are teams that, play well. They're disciplined, play very good in terms of defense. Army and Navy, we know what they bring to the table. And again, Tulane as well. I mean, they're physical. They're physical teams, maybe not on the same par, obviously, as the Big Ten and the SEC, but they can make some noise should they get into the college football playoff.
Well, but that's kind of one of the things to me that's interesting, man, with the Tulane potential here, right? They win today at Navy, right? They're going to have the Memphis game, who's an 8-2 football team right now, then a potential meeting with Army. You're getting 8+ win teams to finish out your season 3 in a row. Could they just jump Boise on deserving it more than people realize?
That's what we'll see with the Green Wave moving forward. Hour 2 is up next.
Sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but Nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on Sports.